The War Council chamber aboard the Apex Dreadnought Eternal Dominion hummed with the kind of tension that makes even battle-hardened commanders check their pulse monitors. Supreme Tactical Overseer Varn'keth stood at the central holographic display, his 6 eyes narrowing at the impossible data streaming across his vision. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm usually reserved for newly hatched recruits. "You are telling me that the humans, those soft-skinned primates who still argue about whether pineapple belongs on their protein discs, have somehow pushed back our entire 4th Fleet?" Sub-Commander Lithara's scales rippled with nervous energy. "Yes, Supreme Overseer. Our latest intelligence suggests something unusual." Varn'keth clicked his mandibles together, producing a sound like bones snapping. "Unusual? What a delightfully vague word. Care to elaborate before I demote you to waste reclamation duty?" The holographic display shifted, showing footage of a recent skirmish near the mining colony of Praxis 7. What Varn'keth saw made his secondary heart skip several beats. Human vessels, outdated and supposedly outgunned, were dancing through space like they had choreographed the entire battle beforehand. Ships that should have been slag were somehow predicting apex movements with frightening accuracy. "How many ships did they deploy?" Varn'keth asked, already dreading the answer. 17 cruisers, Supreme Overseer, standard Earth Alliance configuration. "And our forces?" Lithara's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 63 warships, including 2 command carriers. The silence that followed could have been weaponized. Somewhere in the chamber, a junior officer's breathing apparatus wheezed in the quiet. Varn'keth slowly turned his massive head toward Lithara, his expression suggesting he was reconsidering every life choice that had led to this exact moment. "You are joking," he said flatly. "Please tell me this is some elaborate prank involving hallucinogenic spores." "I wish it were, Supreme Overseer." Varn'keth pulled up the tactical analysis, his eyes scanning through pages of data that made absolutely no sense whatsoever. Fleet movements that should have been random were perfectly countered. Ambush positions that had been classified at the highest level were somehow compromised before his ships even arrived. It was like fighting an enemy who had already read the script. "Show me their command structure," he demanded. "I want to know who is coordinating this circus." Lithara manipulated the controls, bringing up personnel files. Dozens of human faces appeared, each tagged with their roles and backgrounds. Captains, admirals, tactical officers, all the usual suspects you would expect in a fleet engagement. "Run probability analysis," Varn'keth ordered. "I want to know which of these meat sacks is responsible for embarrassing the greatest military power in 5 galaxies. The computer hummed and chirped, processing thousands of data points per second. Battle logs, communication intercepts, ship movements, everything fed into the algorithmic meat grinder. After several minutes that felt like hours, the results appeared. Varn'keth stared at the screen. Then he stared some more. Finally he turned to Lithara with the expression of someone who had just been told that gravity was actually optional. "1, he said, his voice dangerously calm. "The analysis says 1 human is responsible for coordinating the entire defensive strategy." "Yes, Supreme Overseer. Not a committee, not a war council. 1 single human." "That is correct." Varn'keth laughed. It started as a low rumble in his chest cavity and built into a full-throated roar that echoed off the chamber walls. Several junior officers exchanged worried glances, wondering if their commander had finally cracked under the pressure. "Oh, this is rich," he gasped, between fits of laughter. "This is absolutely magnificent. The Apex Collective, conquerors of 47 star systems, humbled by 1 tiny human. Someone alert the propaganda division. I am sure they will love explaining this to the Grand Council." He wiped moisture from one of his eyes and gestured at the display. "Well, do not keep me in suspense. Who is this tactical genius who has made fools of us all?" Lithara pulled up a personnel file. The image showed a human female unremarkable by their species standards. Short, dark hair, average height, wearing the standard uniform of an Earth Alliance tactical officer. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Maya Reeves, age 32, born on some backwater colony whose name Varn'keth did not bother to pronounce. Her record is interesting, Lithara said carefully. She served in the Mars defense grid for 6 years, specializing in predictive warfare algorithms. Before joining the military, she was apparently some kind of competitive game player. Game player, Varn'keth repeated slowly. You mean to tell me that we are being defeated by someone whose previous career involved entertainment software? Strategic simulation games, according to her file. She held championship titles in several. Varn'keth felt a headache forming in his primary brain lobe. Of course she did. Because why would the universe make any sense today? He studied Maya Reeves' face more carefully. There was nothing obviously special about her. No cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications, just standard human biology operating at standard human levels. And yet somehow this unremarkable individual had turned his fleet into a laughingstock. Show me the communication logs, he said. I want to hear how she operates. The system pulled up intercepted transmissions from the last engagement. Maya's voice came through clear and steady, with none of the panic or urgency you would expect from someone coordinating a desperate defense. She sounded like she was ordering lunch. Falcon Squadron, shift to defensive pattern, Delta 7, Tiger Group. I need you 18,000 kilometers off their starboard flank in 40 seconds. Dragon Wing, hold position, and prepare for torpedo spread on my mark. Their cruiser is adjusting course, another voice reported, tension clear in the transmission. I see it, Maya replied calmly. They think we are committing to the left flank. Let them think that for another 30 seconds. There was a pause. Varn'keth could hear other voices in the background, urgent chatter between various ship captains. Through it all, Maya's breathing remained steady and controlled. Mark, Dragon Wing, fire everything. Falcon Squadron, break right and hit their engine clusters. Tiger Group, you are free to engage. The tactical display showed what happened next. Apex ships that had been moving to intercept what they thought was the main assault suddenly found themselves flanked and exposed. Torpedo spreads caught them with shields angled wrong. Fighter squadrons appeared from unexpected vectors. In less than 3 minutes, 5 Apex warships were crippled and limping away from the engagement. Varn'keth watched the replay 3 times, and with each viewing his respect for this human grew alongside his deep, profound irritation. She was not just good. She was reading his commanders like they were children playing at war. Every feint, every bluff, every tactical doctrine drilled into Apex officers since their hatching, she had somehow anticipated and countered. How, he muttered. How is she doing this? We believe she is using some form of psychological modeling, Lithara explained. Analyzing patterns in our previous engagements and extrapolating likely responses, combined with her background in game theory and strategic simulation, she seems to be treating the entire conflict like a complex puzzle. A puzzle? Varn'keth said. She is solving us like a puzzle. Essentially, yes. The Supreme Tactical Overseer turned away from the display and paced the length of the chamber. His claws clicked against the metal floor in a rhythm that matched his racing thoughts. This was not supposed to happen. The Apex Collective had conquered dozens of species through superior technology, better training, and overwhelming force. They did not lose to individual savants who treated warfare like some elaborate game. What do we know about her personally? He asked. Family? Weaknesses? Exploitable psychological vulnerabilities? Lithara pulled up additional files. She grew up on Europa Station. Her parents were terraforming engineers. No siblings. Her psychological profile indicates high function under stress, excellent spatial reasoning, and an almost pathological need to solve complex problems. She apparently spent most of her childhood beating simulation programs designed for military training, so she has been preparing for this her entire life, without even knowing it. It would appear so. Varn'keth stopped pacing and looked at the ceiling, as if the answers he sought might be written in the metal plating above. All right, let us approach this logically. She is good, because she thinks differently than we do. She sees patterns where we see chaos. She treats war like it is a game with rules that can be exploited. That seems to be accurate, Supreme Overseer. Then we need to make her face something she cannot predict. something that breaks her pattern recognition. He turned back to Lithara with a grin that showed far too many teeth. Prepare the fleet for Operation Scattered Star. I want every ship operating on randomized attack protocols. No patterns, no predictable movements, pure calculated chaos. Lithara's scales went pale. Supreme Overseer, that protocol is considered extremely dangerous. The risk of friendly fire increases by— I do not care, Varn'keth interrupted. If she wants to play games with us, then we will change the rules. Let us see how well she adapts when there are no patterns to analyze. Maya Reeves sat in the command chair of the Meridian, her fingers drumming against the armrest in a rhythm that her crew had learned meant she was thinking 3 moves ahead. The coffee in her mug had gone cold an hour ago, but she kept taking sips anyway, more out of habit than any actual desire for caffeine. Commander, we are picking up unusual readings from the Apex fleet, Lieutenant Torres reported from the sensor station. His voice carried that particular note of concern that people get when numbers stop making sense. Define unusual, Maya said, not taking her eyes off the tactical display. Their formation is breaking apart. No, wait. They are reforming. Actually, I have no idea what they are doing. It looks like someone threw their battle plan into a blender. Maya leaned forward. Her interest finally peaked. She studied the holographic representation of enemy ship movements, watching as the orderly apex formations dissolved into what appeared to be complete and utter chaos. Ships were moving in seemingly random directions, breaking every tactical doctrine she had spent weeks analyzing. Huh, she said quietly. That is actually pretty clever. Commander, Torres sounded confused. They figured it out, Maya explained, a slight smile tugging at her lips. Someone over there finally realized I have been reading them like a children's book. So now they are trying to throw out the plot entirely. Captain Henderson, the nominal commander of the Meridian, walked over to stand beside her chair. He was a good officer, smart enough to recognize when someone else was better at the job, which was why he had essentially handed tactical control to Maya 3 battles ago. Can you still predict them? He asked. Maya tilted her head, watching the chaos unfold. Predict? No, not anymore. But here is the thing about randomness, Captain. It cuts both ways. She pulled up a secondary display and started running calculations, her fingers flying across the haptic interface. Computer, analyze current Apex fleet movements. Calculate friendly fire probability based on their dispersal patterns. The system churned through the data and spat out a number that made Henderson whistle low. 23% chance they hit their own ships, he read aloud. That seems high. That seems suicidal, Maya corrected. They just traded tactical coherence for unpredictability, which means they are desperate, and desperate enemies make mistakes. She opened a fleet-wide channel, her voice carrying to every human ship in the battle group. All vessels. This is Reeves. The Apex just threw their playbook out the airlock. We are going to do something they absolutely will not expect. What's that, Commander? Came the voice of Captain Park from the Liberator. We are going to play it safe and boring. There was a moment of stunned silence across the channel. Then someone, Maya thought it might have been the pilot of Raptor 6, actually laughed. Defensive formation Epsilon, she continued. Overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, by-the-book fleet coordination. We are going to be the most predictable, boring, textbook defensive force they have ever seen. Commander, Torres interrupted. The Apex fleet is accelerating. They are coming right at us. Maya watched the enemy ships surge forward in their chaotic formation, like a swarm of angry insects with no queen to guide them. Course they are. Let them come. The next 20 minutes were some of the strangest combat Maya had ever experienced. The Apex ships came at them from every angle simultaneously, firing without coordination or apparent strategy. It should have been overwhelming. Instead, it was almost beautiful in its inefficiency. Incoming fire from bearing 270, Torres called out. Interceptor screen, standard response, Maya replied calmly. Do not overcorrect, just do exactly what the manual says. The human fleet moved like a well-oiled machine, each ship supporting the others in perfect textbook formation. When Apex vessels tried to exploit gaps that should have existed in such a rigid formation, they found those gaps protected by overlapping fire zones. When they attempted to concentrate their forces, the random nature of their own positioning meant half their ships were too far away to support the attack. And then the friendly fire started. Our Apex vessel designated Echo 7 just took a direct hit from their own fleet. Torres reported, his voice a mixture of disbelief and grim satisfaction. Make that 2 hits. 3. They are tearing each other apart. Maya watched it happen with the detached fascination of someone watching a complicated equation solve itself. The Apex had abandoned their coordination in favor of unpredictability, but warfare was not a solo sport. Ships needed to know where their allies were, needed to communicate, needed to trust that the vessel beside them was not going to accidentally ventilate their hull with a plasma cannon. They trained for discipline, she murmured, drilled it into their bones, and now they are asking their commanders to throw all that training away and wing it. But you cannot just turn off decades of conditioning. Commander, the Apex flagship is hailing us, the communications officer announced. Maya raised an eyebrow. Put it through. Audio only. A gravelly voice filled the bridge, speaking accented but clear English. Lieutenant Commander Reeves, I am Supreme Tactical Overseer Varn'keth of the Apex Collective. I would very much like to know how you are still winning when we are not even following our own tactics anymore. Maya could not help it. She grinned. Because you trained your people to be predictable, Overseer? You built an entire military culture around discipline and doctrine. Then you asked them to abandon all of that in the middle of a battle. Your captains are second-guessing every decision, wondering if they are being too predictable or not predictable enough. Meanwhile, my people are just following the plan, because that is what we are good at. There was a long pause. Then Varn'keth's laughter rumbled across the channel, deep and genuine. You are telling me that we defeated ourselves? Pretty much, yeah. You got so focused on not being predictable that you forgot the whole point of having tactics in the first place. Fascinating, infuriating, but fascinating. Another pause. You know, Reeves, in all my years of military service, no one has ever made me feel quite this stupid. There is a first time for everything, Overseer. Indeed, tell me something. How did you know we would resort to chaos tactics? Maya leaned back in her chair, taking another sip of her terrible cold coffee. Because I would have done the same thing. When someone is reading you perfectly, you change the story. But the problem with chaos is that it is really, really hard to control, and in a fleet engagement where coordination is everything, lack of control is basically suicide. So you simply waited for us to make mistakes. I waited for you to make the only move available to you, and then I positioned my fleet to exploit the inevitable consequences. It is not brilliant strategy, Overseer. It is just chess. Chess? Varn'keth repeated. You realize that we have conquered 47 star systems using the tactics you just dismantled in less than an hour. Then I guess those other 47 species did not play enough chess. Another long silence. Maya could hear muffled conversations in the background of the Apex transmission, voices raised in what sounded like heated argument. Finally, Varn'keth spoke again. My officers are advising me to continue the assault. They believe we can still overwhelm you through sheer numbers. Your officers are wrong, Maya said simply. You have already lost 14 ships to friendly fire. Your formation is scattered across 3 million cubic kilometers of space, and my fleet has barely taken any damage because we have been focusing all our energy on not dying while you focus all your energy on looking unpredictable. Math is not on your side here, Overseer. You sound very confident for someone commanding 17 ships against 49. 43, Maya corrected. You lost 6 more while we were talking. Check your sensors. There was a flurry of activity on the other end of the channel. When Varn'keth spoke again, his voice carried a note of grudging respect. You know what the truly annoying part is, Reeves? You are not even gloating. You are just stating facts. Would you prefer that I gloat? Honestly, it might hurt less. At least then I could dismiss you as arrogant rather than accepting that you are simply better at this than my entire command structure. Maya smiled despite herself. There was something almost refreshing about an enemy commander who could acknowledge defeat with humor instead of blustering defiance. Tell you what, Overseer, you withdraw your fleet, we will call this engagement a draw for the record books, and nobody has to explain to their superiors why they lost a fleet to inferior numbers. A draw, Varn'keth said flatly. You humiliated us and you are offering to call it a draw. I am offering you the chance to retreat with your dignity mostly intact. What you do with that offer is entirely up to you. Another pause. Maya could practically hear the calculations happening on the other end. The political considerations, the military realities, the simple mathematics of a losing battle. She waited patiently, watching as more Apex ships limped away from the engagement zone, their hulls scarred by weapons fire from their own allies. Very well, Varn'keth finally said. The Apex Collective will withdraw from this sector. But Reeves, I want you to know something. This war is far from over, and the next time we meet I will not make the same mistakes. I would be disappointed if you did, Overseer. It would make things boring. Boring? Varn'keth laughed again, that deep rumbling sound. Only you would describe galactic warfare as potentially boring. Tell me, do you actually enjoy this? The fighting, the strategy, the constant threat of death. Maya considered the question seriously. Enjoy problems that have solutions. War is just a very complicated problem with a lot of variables. The fact that lives are at stake makes it important, not enjoyable. A very human perspective. We Apex see war as a test of strength and will. You see it as a puzzle to be solved. Maybe that is why I keep winning. Perhaps it is. The channel crackled with static. Until we meet again, Lieutenant Commander. Try not to embarrass us too badly in your after-action reports. No promises. Overseer. The transmission ended. Maya sat back in her chair and finally set down her coffee mug, watching as the Apex fleet began its withdrawal. Ships that had been trying to kill each other minutes ago were now carefully coordinating their retreat, falling back into familiar formation patterns like they were putting on comfortable old clothes. Captain Henderson cleared his throat. Permission to speak freely, Commander. Granted. That was the most polite battlefield defeat I have ever witnessed. Maya laughed, the tension of the last few hours finally draining from her shoulders. Yeah, well, sometimes you get lucky and fight enemies who appreciate good strategy. Makes the whole experience less unpleasant. Do you really think they will come back? Oh, absolutely. Varn'keth is too smart to give up just because one tactic did not work. He will analyze everything we did today, figure out the weaknesses in my approach, and come back with something new. She stood up and stretched, her back popping in several places, which is fine. Gives me time to figure out what he is going to try next. Torres turned from his station, his expression somewhere between awe and concern. Commander, the fleet is reporting minimal casualties. 2 ships with minor damage, 0 fatalities. We just fought the Apex Collective to a standstill and nobody died. That was the idea, Lieutenant. Winning is good. Winning without losing people is better. She walked to the viewing port and stared out at the stars, watching the distant glows of Apex engines as they retreated into the black. Somewhere out there, Varn'keth was probably having a very uncomfortable conversation with his superiors, trying to explain how one human had turned his chaos strategy into a masterclass in why military doctrine existed in the first place. Maya smiled. It had been a good day. Nobody died, the math had worked out, and she had solved another complicated problem. That was really all she ever wanted from this war. Well, that and maybe a fresh cup of coffee. All right, people, she called out to the bridge crew. Let us run a full diagnostic on all systems and prep for the next engagement, because I guarantee you, the Apex are going to come back with something interesting. How can you be so sure? Henderson asked. Maya turned from the viewport, her expression completely serious. Because if I were them, I would be absolutely furious right now, and furious enemies are creative enemies, which means things are about to get really fun. Your definition of fun terrifies me, Commander. Good. That means you are paying attention.